All right, welcome everybody to our March 2022 Lunch and Learn. The title is Perception is Position. This is all about brand perception and brand positioning. So this is a really fun topic, and this is our monthly Lunch and Lab series that we do every single month. And I call them lunch, obviously, because it happens at lunchtime, but lab because I do try to make it interactive and something where you can test ideas and learn like as if you were in a laboratory. So not just a standard sort of lunch and learn where you sit and listen to me talk, but somewhere where you can come and interact and engage, test and bounce new ideas off of each other, and just learn some things that you can ultimately put into your business. Most of us here are business owners or maybe aspire to that one day or are interested in marketing. And so I'm really grateful that all of you decided to spend an hour with me. There are lots of other things you could be doing with your time, but you've chosen to be here. A little bit of housekeeping. Caroline is my assistant. She will be sort of monitoring the chat. We have a smaller group today, so if we have any questions that are asked in the chat, we should be able to stop and kind of answer those as we go along. I've got a wealth of information to get to, but I do want to keep it nice and light and fun. And if you want to keep your camera on, you can do that. If you need to leave early, you can do that also. Since you did register and attend today, you will be able to get the recording as well as the slide deck later on. So welcome again, everybody, for being here. Thanks so much. And let's go ahead and jump into the information. One last thing, I do believe that these virtual events are opportunities to network. So feel free to drop your business introductory information into the chat as well. Who knows what sort of networking connections can happen. So feel free to do that during this time also. All right. A little bit about me. I'm your host for today. I'm Reggie Holmes, owner, creative director, founder of Enthuse Creative. We do brand strategy, consulting, and creative services. My background's in graphic design and been in business since 2013, based here in the DC metro area. And providing services to businesses in this area, but really anywhere. That's the beauty of doing branding and marketing work in today's world. You can really work from anywhere. And I want to give a special shout out to Bella, who will be my intern this summer. She's joining today. So glad that she could be here, and she's excited to learn more about this topic also. I have a poll. I will try to launch it here. So you guys can try to fill that out if you can. We'll give it a minute or so. But what is your go-to tool for tracking your brand's perception? And now some of you may not know what brand perception is. You may have questions, but these are some common tools that people might use to track, how their brand is perceived out in the marketplace. So we'd love to get a sense from you all what you use, what you've thought about using. Some of them are more kind of common than others, but we've got Google Alerts, customer surveys, Googling myself or my company, social media chatter, and hashtags, and then whatever people tell me or over here. So it looks like we've got some folks on Google Alerts, customer surveys. Okay, we've got a little bit of everything all over the board. So that's great. Thank you for participating. We'll share the results. All right. So thanks for doing that. Like to just get a sense of, what people are doing. So those are all some ways that you can get a sense of what your customers in the marketplace feels about your business. Enough of looking at me. Our goals and objectives for today, I always like to kind of start there. So you know what you can expect to get out of our time together. First, to define and clarify the relationship between brand perception and brand positioning. Secondly, to illustrate how their interconnected nature influences your business, customer, and competitive landscape. And then lastly, to identify what you as a business owner can do every day to build a stronger brand perception and enhance your brand position. So that's what I hope you get out of it. And that's sort of what we'll focus on as we dive into it. I want to tell you guys a little story. So I have been a graphic designer my whole professional life. I've done some other things here and there, like most people. But my first job in college, and when I first got out of college, was as a bank teller. I actually worked at a credit union in where I'm from, which is Richmond, Virginia. So I am not really a numbers person or finance person, but I appreciated working in the bank. And one of the things that I remember very distinctly about my experience as a teller was these people called mystery shoppers. And you can just kind of raise your hand if you know what a mystery shopper is. I had not known anything about that. But basically, they were these people that would come into the bank, and they were sort of there checking you out, right? They were making sure that things were operating in the bank as they were supposed to. And they may be assigned specifically to have a transaction with you at your station. So they were real customers, but they had this sort of other mission that they were on, which was to make sure that you, as an employee of the bank, as a representative of the credit union, were doing your job the way you were supposed to be doing. And so we were always striving to be on point in our transaction interactions with people, our members in the credit union, because we never knew who was a mystery shopper. You go through dozens, sometimes hundreds of transactions in a day, but you never know who is a mystery shopper. And you might, at the end of the month or whenever they did the review, you never know who you engage with that might have been checking you out. And so that's an important concept to kind of think about when we think about brand perception. So there's this idea that your customers obviously are forming an opinion, an idea, an understanding, and awareness of who you are and how you operate. And it's easy to be conscious of your brand perception when you know who's looking and who's forming the opinion. But when you don't know, it does put you in a place where you have to be on point all the time, or at least striving for an excellent way of doing business that represents the very best of your brand all the time. And so I'm reminded of that as we have this conversation about brand perception, because the reality is whether people are shopping from you or not, they are paying attention to how you do business. They're paying attention to how your brand is positioned, what you say about yourself, and whether you actually do that, whether you show up or not. And we'll talk about the ways that brand perception is formed by people in the marketplace. But I thought that was a good illustration of sort of what we kind of want to think about when we think about brand perception. Is something that is consciously happening, but it's also happening whether you're aware of it or not. And so we got a little exercise. We've obviously are all familiar with brands. We encounter brands in many ways every single day, whether you live in Virginia or in the Netherlands, wherever you are. When you see the following brand identifiers, I want you to think about the first quality, characteristic, or attribute that comes to mind. So you don't have to say the name of it, but what's the first thing that sort of pops into your mind? And you can just kind of unmute and say that. We'll take a few minutes to do that. So anybody that wants to jump in there can just, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Can you repeat the question one more time, Reggie?
Sure. So when you see this brand, what's the first quality or attribute or characteristic that pops into your mind? Not about, the logo itself, but about what it represents, the company, the business.
Well, I would say that to me, it represents, everybody knows Coca-Cola, but it represents a company that has been around for a while, and that they are still, marketing themselves in a way that transcend or goes through time, like from the time they started to now, they're still progressing in that.
Okay. So I'm going to say timeless. I'm going to summarize what you said is timeless. Anyone else? Yeah, you can just unmute and jump in there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, just to add on to that, definitely it's classic, especially with the colors and the font, how it's like mostly stayed the same through the years, like definitely transcends time and has a really classic like antiquity quality about it. But also to add on, I feel like I've always found a sense of community with Coca-Cola, especially as they've marketed their bottles with the specific names on the like share a Coke with this person, and it in their commercials always seems to like emphasize that it brings people together.
Okay, excellent. All right.
I was going to say Santa Claus for some. That was what came to mind when I first saw it.
Okay.
Which is so random, but obviously I know they always do the advert every year.
Yes. Okay. So they've created a close association with a particular holiday or a particular with Santa Claus. Very good. All right, so let's move on to the next one. And I want you guys to just kind of keep in mind the things that we talked about. What about this one?
Established, but old-fashioned.
Okay.
Slightly old-fashioned.
Okay. Anyone else?
Longevity. It's like everything I know about a computer is it started with IBM.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. So the last one. Any thoughts on them?
I don't actually know who that is.
Really?
Is it an airline company?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, yes. So yeah, Southwest is so each of these is a market leader, right? So they would be a company that's positioned. Coke is like the leader in global CPG, which is consumer packaged goods. IBM is a leader in like global IT software market. And then in the US, Southwest is the biggest airline. So there are probably other names that we might think of, but a lot of them have sort of merged or have downsized and things like that. So Southwest is actually the biggest airline. But all of these companies, so that one is maybe not as familiar, but it also doesn't have the longevity or timelessness of some of the other, the first two that we looked at. But what's interesting is that there is, we can look at these things and we make those associations, right? Especially the really long-standing companies and organizations. And so the ones that excel at brand perception and have used it to build a really strong brand position, they get us to do that recall, right? They use advertisements, they use logos, colors, fonts, they use things that we get very familiar with to be able to build that sense of whether it's community or connection. So we call to mind these certain values and things that we mentioned when we looked at these companies. So that's just a little illustration of how companies that are top of mind tend to be top of market, and how sure we see the logo, right, but it's not just what we see with our eyes, it's what we start to think with our minds, and how all that's connected that helps them to really have a strong position. So in the chat, I'd like for you to think about another well-known top of market brand that evokes this sort of strong positive perception for you. So what's a brand that you can see and you just, they give you like the warm fuzzies, right? You feel really great about them. You start to think great positive thoughts. And for that reason, they sort of have that dominant position in your mind. Like when you go to buy X product, you start with this company and don't go anywhere else, because you have a strong positive perception and they've built a really strong position in your mind. So think about that. You could just put those answers in the chat. We'll try to read some of those off here. Okay, Apple, Samsung, Mars Candy, Oreo, very good. It's interesting how many of these are products, and we typically feed this idea of brand perception, hi John, and positioning in terms of products. And so the challenge can be to start to apply some of these things to B2B or other businesses where your business might work with other businesses. So great job with that exercise. Let's get into some definitions, sort of defining some things. So brand perception is what customers believe a product or service represents, not what the company owning the brand says it does. So as you guys were sort of illustrating with your answers, Coke makes stuff that you can drink, right? They actually make many different products, but their signature product is Coca-Cola, right? It's soda. But the things that we mentioned didn't really have anything to do with drinking soda, right? It evokes ideas of timelessness, classic nature that can be sort of updated and refreshed, but essentially is the same and calls us back to nostalgia or community, being with other people, Christmas time and special celebrations. So that is a reflection of their positive brand perception that they've honestly built over a really long period of time. It's not just, we make soda or we make other types of things that you can drink, right? And so that definition kind of comes from this company called Qualtrics. But as we start to think about a bigger picture of brands beyond just the logo that we might see or even the tagline that we might hear, what that brand really is all about is creating things that bring people together. That's really sort of and special moments where there's happiness and joy in particular, as far as it relates to Coca-Cola. So so this is what brand perception really is, and it encompasses a number of things. It's what the customers and the market see, it's what they think, it's what they feel, and it's what they believe. And if you think about the answers that you guys gave, it sort of illustrates that, right? It's you see the logo and the colors, right? It makes you think about Santa Claus or Christmas time or special celebrations. Those things make you feel happy and positive. And ultimately, we believe, hey, Coke is a good product. I may not even drink soda, right? I haven't had a dark cola in a long time. I don't know about you, but even if you don't partake, we sort of recognize and make a place in our minds for Coca-Cola because we know what that represents, right? Even if you're not actually a consumer of it, it has a place in our world and it has a place in the market, which is the top place. There are other people that make the same exact kinds of beverages, but nobody has that position that Coke has because they've done such a great job of building that brand perception and making these positive associations in our minds. So brand positioning is kind of the how. If brand perception is the what, brand positioning is a how. And it really speaks to the prominence that a brand is able to claim in the competitive marketplace because of positive brand perception, as we were talking about Coke. And I love the word position or positioning because it's both a verb and a noun. And so it encompasses the activity, all the things that a company like Coca-Cola would use to achieve that position in the marketplace, and then the outcome, right? They're in sort of the top spot because of the things that they've done. So when we speak about positioning, it's not just what they do or where they got to, it's all the things that they use to get to where they got to. And there's two dimensions of brand positioning that we want to think about. There's one as it relates to the customer. So there's how your brand is positioned to your individual customer, where they are, where you sit, if you will, in their mind, either at the top or near the top or nowhere in their consciousness. And then there's positioning as it relates to the competitive landscape, the market. Are you at the top of the market, or are you, in a more competitive situation somewhere else further down in the marketplace? And Coke is sort of in a position of being first in the mind and first in the market, right? And that's sort of the position that everybody wants to get to, but it takes work. The brand perception, as we'll talk about more, is sort of how you get on the way there. And this gentleman is known as the father of marketing, or modern marketing. And he says brand positioning is the act of designing the company's offering and image to occupy a distinctive place in the mind of the target market. And I like this definition a lot because he says it's the act of designing. So it's the outcome, that distinctive and I would say prominent place in the mind of the market, but it's the act of designing, which is like two activities, right? So it speaks to this idea that you don't just get the position of first place in your customer's mind or in the market because you want to be there, right? It takes some work, it takes strategy, it takes planning. So planning and execution. I like this quote, something I'd like for you to keep in mind, that there's some design to it, right? It takes time. It takes the strategy and the plan executed over time. So I'll pause here. If there's any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. I don't know if we have any, but again, because we have a smaller group, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to add those, and we'll try to touch on them as we go through. So I have this little formula that I like. It's called the grand brand equation. And it says visible times viable equals valuable. And I want to introduce this so we can keep it in mind as we talk through more specifically about brand perception and brand position. So all this really means is that as you think about growing any brand, the more visible that you can make the brand, multiplied by the more viable you can make it, in the sense that you show people that you can do the work, that you are the provider who has the solution to their problems. So they need to first know you, right? They need to first know that you exist, be aware. All right, moving from aware to available and capable. That's where the viability comes in. And there's many ways to do that. As you multiply the efforts of both of those, that's what's going to make you more valuable, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind. As we're talking about brand perception, we're really talking about moving beyond awareness to people not only know you exist, but they know, why you exist, what you do, and what solutions you're able to provide. And viable means that you not only say you can do it, but you've now provided evidence, you provided testimonials, case studies, you've done the things to show that you've repeatedly been able to solve this particular problem. And as you bring those two together, that's just going to increase your value to your customers in the marketplace. So let's look at this relationship between brand perception and brand position, right? They're connected. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to touch on these things that help you to grow the connection between how you're perceived in the market and then where you're positioned in the market. And so promoting and following through on your brand purpose, like people know what you're all about. Obviously your business exists to make money, but what do you do beyond that? How are you actually, if you say you're here to eradicate child poverty, how are you doing that? How are you living out that purpose for your business? Clear communication. So not a lot of jargon, not a lot of industry insider talk, but very clearly letting people know how you add value, what you do. And part of that communication is what you don't do, right? So next is consistently delivering on your brand promise. Very similar to brand purpose. So purpose is why, promise is what you are communicating to people that you will do with every interaction, with every engagement. So beyond just we provide X service, but are you doing it, with a smile? Are you doing it within a certain time frame? Are you doing it with a commitment to, act in a way that's most beneficial for the customer, or trying to be more sustainable? Whatever it is that is part of your promise, are you consistently doing that? Emphasizing the experience and the service. So people today don't just want products and services delivered. Of course they want that. They really want something extra. So that's what's going to help you stand out in the marketplace, is how you can deliver that with an emphasis on creating a special experience. How can you tailor it to this particular customer? Can you make it personalized? Can you make it automated? Do you recognize me when I come back through your sales pipeline or something like that? Are you opening up opportunities and offers for me that are a benefit of engaging in a deeper relationship with you? Those types of things. And the strong internal culture and leadership. This one is huge because there are a lot of rotten companies out there. There are a lot of people that have a good product or service, but they treat their people badly. And people want to be aligned with companies that are living out their values, that have really clear and strong values, and treat their people well. Because people think if you treat your employees terribly, chances are you will treat me terribly as a customer. And so people, the more they know about companies and their culture, it's starting to be a differentiator and make a huge difference. So these are things that, if done well, can really strengthen your brand perception and your brand position. On the other side, what are things that undermine your brand perception and position? So poor customer service or experience. People talk, and there are many ways to review or sort of air out dirty laundry of your interaction with a customer. And people like to keep receipts, as they say. And so if you have a track record of having poor service and experience, then it will get out. And that's something that can definitely impede and hinder the way that people look at you. And that will obviously weaken your position in the market. So illegal or improper practices, there are a lot of watchdog groups and things of that nature that are there to specifically try to hold businesses accountable, right? To making sure that they are doing the right things and are helping people and not harming people. Similarly, erroneous information, fraudulent claims. People love to fact check and make sure that you're doing what you say you're going to do. That's what a lot of these come down to. Obviously, poor quality, irrelevant products or services. You can't be, behind the times, right? People are used to innovation fast. If they are expressing a need, you have a product or service, but you don't make updates to it in a timely fashion, or you don't respond to what people feel like are legitimate concerns, they'll move on to something else, right? And that will hinder your perception and position. And this last one, trying to do too much, a lack of clarity and focus. I think what the modern marketplace teaches us is that you don't have to do every single thing. You can focus and niche down. And with all the data out there, you can find your audience. You can find your market. And it's more important to have a really strong perception to be known and understood and valued by your group of customers than to spend a whole lot of money on advertising and just, you know, kind of have this big name, but you're not really serving your core customers well. So it's important to try not to do too much and really focus on where your customers are, see them, hear them, and be responsive to them. So there are three purposes with all this in mind of what I believe, you know, brands are supposed to do. Identify, connect, and differentiate. There's many, many definitions for branding, what brands are, what they do that are out there. But I believe at the end of the day, these are kind of like the three most important purposes for why brands are created and exist. And if we think about the last slides that we looked at, all those things in the last slide that undermine, there are things that make it difficult to identify and make it difficult to connect and difficult to differentiate, right? So they are bad for your brand, obviously, for your brand perception, your brand position. And the things on the first set of slides, if you go back and look at them, they all kind of help you do these things. So you want to align your brand with that. And thinking more about, you know, having defined perception, position, and sort of what brand is in general, what is that relationship like? You know, we talked about how awareness is the first step. Perception assumes awareness. So we're not talking about people just sort of knowing about who I am. When you first start your business, awareness is really important, right? Because nobody's ever heard of you. But as you get established, we move on from awareness to perception. So they know, but do they really understand? Do they really value what I do? And in perception, the goal is that leads to trust. And then trust leads to loyalty. So we're moving sort of down that spectrum to, you know, customer behavior. And a loyal customer is the most valuable type of customer. And when a customer has you in a position of loyalty, that's a strong position, right? You want to do everything you can to retain that place of being considered a loyal, a brand that customer is loyal to. And just some stats to think about in terms of long-term value of customer relationships that are built on perception and position and trust and loyalty. Acquiring a new customer can cost 5 times more than retaining an existing customer. Increasing customer retention by 5% can increase profits from 25% to 95%, right? So it's a big opportunity to grow revenue simply by doing a great job of keeping the customers that you have. And the success rate of selling to a customer you already have is 60 to 70%, while the success rate of selling to a new customer is 5 to 20%. So those are just some stats. Don't want to hit you over the head with a bunch of stats, but just want to reinforce that the goal is to get them to trust you, to become loyal. And in this day and age, loyalty is really hard won because people have so many options available to them. There's always some shiny new thing that promises to be better than the last thing. And so if anything, this idea of brand perception and positioning, hopefully it gets you to think a lot about how to keep the customers that you have and just add more value to them. And if you need help with continuing to stay in touch with your customers, please talk to John Rutenberg of CCC Solutions. He is the man who can help you to be able to know who your customers are and have a system for staying in touch with them so they can remain loyal customers. All right, the more you enhance the things that we talked about, the strengtheners of brand perception and position, the more you're going to enrich your brand position, and you're going to build these sorts of relationships that you want to have with your customers. So here's a little graphic to try to kind of illustrate how these things work. We talked about the, you have a question, John?
No, after those nice things, I was fumbling to applaud you, not really raise my hand. So everyone gets to see my technological skills. But
Okay.
thank you, Reggie. I
There you go.
appreciate you saying that.
No problem. That's like a high five. So I'll give you a high five to my screen.
There you go. Lower hand, mute.
So here's a little graphic just to kind of illustrate, some of the things that we talked about. Brand perception. If we think about that definition of identify, connect, and differentiate, brand perception is what helps you to be identified to the customer. And as you do that, it creates the connection, and you build the connection, and that's what gives you that strong brand position. In the marketplace, perception is what's going to help you be identified, and then as you think about people having their choices between different options in the marketplace. On the way to getting a strong brand position, you are focused in on differentiating. So it's at first being seen, known, kind of understood, recognized, valued. And then as people think about all the different options they have in a competitive market, how can you differentiate, right? That's what's going to allow you to really lock in that strong position. And most of us are not going to be first in terms of order or time in our market, right? We are one of many players in our space. So we can't rely on, well, we were first there, right? We can't necessarily rely on, we've got the biggest budget and we can just run ads that blow everybody else out of the water, right? So this gets into, okay, what are the things that really set you apart? What are the things that are really valuable to your customer? And it always kind of goes back to your customer because they're going to be the ones through some of the tools that we'll look at for brand perception that are going to tell you what they see, what they feel, what they understand about your business, and the things that they feel really set you apart. Those are the differentiators that you want to lean into, because everybody is, trying to get customers, and most people are doing some variation of the same kinds of things, but people are able to, in our minds, we create a space for the things that are similar but different. And so figuring out what is it, the thing that is very different but valuable about your company, about your brand, that's what's going to allow you to carve out a strong position in the minds of your customer. So think through that, but it's never just about what I as a business owner think about what makes me different. I really need to be relying on what my customers actually say. And as we think about these things, a few other things to remember, we can't directly control perception or position, right? I can't make people think about my business the way I want them to. But what I can do is influence and guide through strategic, proactive efforts. I can give people the tools to be able to see how the way I offer my services is different than my competitors. And I can do that in a way that's very positive and affirming of my competitors, right? Because I don't want to trash anybody else's business, but I need to be clear in my communication about the value that I'm going to bring a potential customer to them from working with me. And that's over and against someone else, but it's all positive, right? I'm trying to be proactive, be positive, and position my business in a place of prominence in their mind. So when they have a need for my services, they think of me and not necessarily about someone else. And again, in our day and age, you know, people use social media, but people are aware of how social media and these other tools are really trying to, you know, get them to take certain actions. And I find that people don't want to be manipulated. They don't want to be told what to do. We're not in a position to make them do anything. They have lots of choices and options, and it's a smart business strategy to always acknowledge that people can make their choice, right? They're smart. They're going to do what's best for them. Give them the tools and the resources to be able to make a great decision for them. Show them, you know, why it's you if you have the solution to their problems. But we can't make people do what they don't want to do, right? So that's not what we're talking about when we talk about shaping perception and establishing position. So what are some tools? There are perception surveys out there that you can either use or create yourself. There's a platform called Attest that you can look at. There's a service called Respondent where you can create surveys and, you know, offer people money or other types of compensation to be able to respond if you're really serious about getting that sort of customer feedback. We mentioned, you know, Google Alerts earlier. There's Google tools that are available. I'm sure there's other ones too, but alerts are a great place to start. When people are talking about your business or your brand, just set up an alert so you will know about it. You'll be the first to kind of learn about how, what the market is saying about your brand or your service, or you can run an alert on anything really. Similarly, you can search on all the different social media platforms, follow certain hashtags as they relate to your business or your service. Because, you know, I'm in the branding and marketing space. People have ideas about my company specifically, but they also have ideas and opinions about branding as an industry. And so I want to know about those things because that affects directly what I do and how I market my business. And then on a higher end, you can curate focus groups to get specific information if you want to get feedback or perception of your business, or, you know, maybe it's a particular product or offering. And then lastly, you know, reviews. I'm a big proponent of Google reviews because they help you with search. But there are many other types of review platforms. But reviews are you know, particularly with Google, because people have to put their name and face to it. It's an honest, in most cases, assessment of, you know, who you are and what you do in your business. And for anyone that's just sort of doing a search, it can give them at a high level a sense of what the marketplace sort of says and thinks about what you do. So it's kind of a first barrier of entry. And because it's so prominent, it's important to kind of invest in that and try to make sure that front line perception is strong as people are looking into your business. So this is from the Attest platform. Hopefully you can see these. These are, they have on this link here 10 examples of brand perception survey questions. So if you're interested in creating your own survey, you know, it says, what type of products or services does your brand sell? How would you describe your brand to a friend? Which, if any of the following traits do you associate with your brand? And they will obviously have a list of traits. What emotions do you think, do you feel when you think about the brand? Who do you think the brand is aimed at? And so these are just kind of the types of questions that you would have on a brand perception survey. So think about those. And then I would like for you guys to put in the chat, what are some other good types of brand perception questions that you would add? These are like 5 of the 10. I'm gonna go back to the slide. But based on what you've learned today, and, you know, the information that you would want to know from the marketplace about your own brand, your own business, what's another question that you would add to this brand perception survey? So take a minute or so and just kind of think about that. If you want to say it out loud, you can. If you want to put it in the chat, But what are some questions that you would add to these questions as you were building out your own brand perception survey? And if you want to share, you can just unmute and share. Okay, we've got one from Bella. What makes your brand unique from other companies in the same market? Very good question. How have my products and services improved or helped you? Great question from Gary. What problem do you solve? Okay, great. From John. So these are questions that you would be asking the respondent. So a person who is a customer, and we're going to assume that they have heard of your business. So this is not a brand awareness survey question, which might be as simple as, hey, have you heard of us? But this is, you've heard of us. Okay, now what do you think about it? Caroline says, what would your employees or contractors say about your brand? Very good. That's a great question, because who knows the brand better than the people that work for it every single day? So you guys did a great job with thinking through, those types of questions. You want to get a sense of what people think about the brand as it relates to them personally, but also in the marketplace in general. So this link here, we'll include it with the slide deck. I definitely encourage you to read that article, which talks about a lot of things as it relates to brand perception. But specifically, I found value in this section where it talks about these questions that you can include on a survey. All right. So as we sort of wrap up here, 3 things to include in your brand perception and brand position strategy. And I call these kind of the 3 R's. So these are practical things that you can focus on for yourself. 1, reviews. Again, sort of speaking to that brand equation, visibility and viability right there, front page, feature them on your website, on your social media. It's something that people see and respond to. So have a strategy for collecting and deploying and displaying reviews. That's going to be increasingly important, because we tend to not believe when people say that they're amazing, right? But if you have a bunch of other people that are just like me that are saying that you're amazing, I'm going to believe that more than, of course, you as a business owner, you're going to say, we're great, you need to work with us, right? So reviews are important. I think relationships are important, right? Having those relationships with people who refer you, your referral partners, customers, and even competitors, because people like to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And so the more people that know, like, and trust you, the more opportunities you create for positive perception, right? I find that there's nothing more valuable than when competitors don't necessarily view you as competitors. I think that's just a healthy mindset anyway. But when you have great relationships with people and understand that there's opportunities in the marketplace for everybody, and I don't need to put you down to do great at what I'm doing. Like, we can serve our customers, in a great way and be all good with each other. That is great for your perception in the marketplace, right? People like to work with companies that are thought highly of. And if you can have your competitors think highly of you, of course, your customers and referral partners and vendors and stakeholders and things like that, the more you can have those great relationships, that's going to aid you in having a perception that's positive and then building that strong positioning. And then regularity, this consistency in your systems, in your messaging, in updating, information on your website, on your different channels. You don't want to appear out of date or out of touch. So just being regular in that communication is going to help you be perceived as relevant and timely, and it's going to allow you to be able to be responsive and flexible in the marketplace, which people appreciate. So those are 3 things you want to make sure that you include. Our last, key, the title of our workshop, Perception is Position. The way to change the way your brand is positioned is to change how your brand is perceived. And if we go back to those big brands that we looked at in the beginning, none of them got there in that position of prominence in the marketplace or in the minds of their customers overnight, right? It does take time, it takes diligence, all the things that we talked about today. But if you can change the way that your customers see you, over time, you can change the way that you're positioned in the market, right? You can go from unknown and unheard of to what I like to say, not only well-known, but well-regarded. And with customers that have come along with you on that journey and that stick by you because they've moved from just finding out about you to trusting you to being loyal to you. So that's our workshop. We do have a special offer for those who attended, 50% off our brand perception and brand position audit. So if you're interested in that, here's my contact information, and you can reach out and send me an email. But that is our time as far as the workshop. This QR code is for getting on my calendar for the remainder of March. Anyone here is open to a complimentary 30-minute consultation. So we'd love to chat with you and just sort of follow up on what we talked about today if you have interest. So here's my info. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. Thank you guys for attending. And we have a few minutes before